Hello and welcome to this special edition of the Way to Wow shows. I'm your host, Kevin Bemel, and I want to wish you a meaningful and happy Labor Day here on the first Monday of September, as it is customarily celebrated. So, just like this is a kind of group of shows, if you will, that I started on July 4th with Independence Day, and talked a little bit about the holiday and read the Declaration of Independence, which is, of course, the document through which the United States declared its independence from Great Britain. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about, first of all, the history of Labor Day and the meaning of the holiday. And I have another document that I plan to read that I hope you will find meaningful for the day. I know we're used to thinking of these, especially the Monday holidays, as well. It gives us a long weekend, and that's certainly the case. But these holidays were established to give us time to reflect on their various meanings. And so that's why I wish people a meaningful as well as a happy Labor Day, that we really think about what is Labor Day all about, and why do we take this one day a year to mark for this important event is the wrong word, this important feature, I guess, is the best way to put it, of our society. So Labor Day grew out of the early labor movement in the late 19th century. So, as you may know from your history classes, right, the United States at its founding was primarily an agrarian and artisan-based economy. So, farmers grew things and sold them, both domestically and internationally, and artisans crafted things. So one of the most famous artisans was Paul Revere, who was a silversmith, and he created cups and plates and silverware, etc., that again was sold domestically and internationally as well. And it wasn't until the advent of steam power, the steam engine, and the creation of railroads and the industrialization, especially of the northern part of the United States, that the real nature of the country started to change. So we went from a country of primarily individual farmers and individual artisans, and of course there were professionals as well, lawyers and such. We went from a country of primarily individuals laboring essentially in their own businesses to one where large companies were created and people worked for those companies. So textiles and clothing or textiles and fabric was an early heavily industrialized business. So were railroads and steamboat transportation. And this was a new feature of economic life in the country, where someone spent really his whole life as laboring on behalf of someone else. And so in many cases, these people labored for very long hours. It wasn't unusual for them to work 12 hours a day or more, 6 days a week. They would have the Sabbath off. In some cases, in other cases, they would work 7 days a week. There was no paid time off like we have nowadays. There were no holidays except for perhaps Christmas, and so. For someone who did not own his own farm, or maybe did, but couldn't make a go of it and lost it and had to go to work for somebody else, life as a laborer was very, very hard. And once they became a laborer, it was very, very difficult for them to get out of the labor force and go out on their own. So the first Labor Day was celebrated in 1882. And it was a It's usually been credited to a fellow by the name of Peter J. McGuire. He was a co-founder of the American Federation of Labor, the AFL, or to Matthew McGuire, not to be confused with McGuire. He was a machinist and secretary of the Central Labor Union in New York. So, it's debated who came up with it first, but you can see in both cases they were labor leaders. And the first official Labor Day celebration took place on September 5th in 1882. And it was organized by the Central Labor Union. There was a parade of about 10,000 workers who marched from City Hall to Union Square in New York. And this first Labor Day celebration really set the stage for future Labor Day celebrations. And so the idea of a day to honor laborers began to gain popularity. And then as we continue on through the very end of the 1800s, there were events that happened. For example, there was the Pullman strike of 1894. It was a nationwide railroad strike that began when Pullman workers in Chicago protested wage cuts and the firing of union representatives. There was quite violent clashes. The government sent in troops to break it up. And as a result, the federal government realized that they had quite a bad reputation among laborers, the laboring class in the United States. And so as a way to sort of, and by the way, some workers were killed in those clashes. And so as a way to sort of make amends to laborers, Congress passed federal legislation making Labor Day a federal holiday. The bill was signed into law on June 28th of 1894 by President Grover Cleveland, and it officially recognized the first Monday in September as a day to honor American workers and their contribution to our society. So you see that Labor Day as a holiday is 130 years old this year. And so it's been around for quite a long time. Let's see, 70, so over half of the history of our country. And over the decades, of course, Labor Day has evolved. It started out as a day of protest and advocacy. Now it's become more a day of general celebrations, parades, picnics, that sort of thing. And in my day, Labor Day marked the beginning of the school year. Now, I know my daughter has been in school for already about, I think, 3 weeks. So Labor Day kind of used to mark the unofficial end of summer, not so much anymore. I will say on a sartorial level, which isn't really recognized anymore, it used to be that when men wore evening clothes, tuxedos and such. So if they were going to wear a white dinner jacket as opposed to a black tuxedo jacket, they did so between Memorial Day in May and Labor Day in September. And to a certain extent, the military followed that rule as well. Nowadays, it's not uncommon for men to wear white dinner jackets really all year round, especially in a warm climate like Southern California. And so that really is the essence of Labor Day. It's an opportunity for us to reflect on the contribution that laborers have made, the laboring class has made in our society. So probably nowadays we would call them blue collar workers. And it's interesting to note that I think on some level we're seeing a devolution, or we have seen a devolution of labor. More and more people who are laborers starting their own businesses. Not as much as probably would be good for society. And yet at the same time, over the last several years at least, we've seen an upsurge in union activity and the favorable view of labor unions by people in the United States. So I read something earlier this morning in my email that something around 70 or 75% of Americans see labor unions favorably currently. That's high compared to what it's been over the last few decades, even as members of labor unions as a percent of the population is at its lowest that it's ever been. So I think we would make a mistake if we thought of Labor Day as only honoring those people who are involved in labor unions. Many people are not in labor unions. For example, in the Southeast, there's a number of automobile manufacturing plants where the workers are not unionized, and yet they work equally hard. Same is true among like warehouse facilities, for example. Only a few Amazon facilities are organized by labor. I was listening yesterday to a podcast that featured the CEO of one of the sort of high-end supermarket chains, and all of a sudden I'm going up on the name, Whole Foods, and he was saying that they were, and the interviewer was asking him about his position on labor unions, and he said, I don't have any problem with labor unions. Just here at Whole Foods, we feel like having a direct relationship with our workers provides a much better builds a much better company and provides a much better shopping experience for our customers. So, and certainly I think we would want to include the people who worked at Whole Foods. We would want to honor them this Labor Day. I shop at Whole Foods from time to time. People there work just as hard as the people who work at Ralph's, which is a Kroger's own grocery store where the workers are unionized. So I think it's an opportunity for us to think about our encounters with labor. Now, someone like me, I'm a professional, and so my encounters with so-called blue collar workers or laborers, however we're going to refer to them, usually is in some kind of transaction, and it's incumbent upon me to be mindful of how hard these people work and the dignity of what they're doing. And I would ask all of you who are watching this episode, no matter where you fit into the economic scheme of things, to remember that someone who is perhaps working as a clerk in a retail store, or maybe is handling the landscape maintenance at your home, or works at a gas station, that these people are entitled to our decent treatment by us. They're entitled to the respect of one human being interacting with another, unless a person acts in a disrespectful manner. And so on this Labor Day, again, I would ask you to reflect on how you interact with working people, whether as colleagues, whether as, like I said, on a transactional basis, and just how you think about them and how you think about how they should be treated, and respect the dignity of work and the service that they're performing. So, in honor of Labor Day, I looked around for something to read that I thought would help us focus on this idea of the proper way to think about people who work for a living, work in labor associated fields for a living. And I found a speech that was given by Martin Luther King Jr. on October 26th, 1967, at Barrett Junior High School. I believe it was for a graduation, and Dr. Martin Luther King spoke in this speech about the dignity of labor. And so I am going to read this speech, and again, I hope you will find it. It will help you focus on the meaning of this day. So. Um, Barrett Junior High School was in the city of Philadelphia. It was a high school heavily populated by Black children, and that's to whom I think Dr. King is speaking. But I think that does not, nonetheless, it's relevant to all of us. And in reading the speech, I really felt like it speaks to all people, and I do think, by the way, that is a lot of the power of Dr. King, that although he was looking to uplift Black Americans, indeed, what he was really talking about was uplifting all Americans and our society and culture in general. So here we go. Principal Mr. Williams, members of the faculty and members of the student body of Barrett Junior High School, ladies and gentlemen. I need not pause to say how very delighted I am to be here today and to have the opportunity of taking a very brief break in a pretty busy schedule in the city of Philadelphia to share with you, the students of Barrett Junior High School. I guess I ought to start out with a commercial, and that is tonight we're going to have a great night in the city of Philadelphia at the Spectrum. I know you've heard that the new impressive structure called I know you've heard of that new impressive structure called the Spectrum, and I know you've heard of Harry Belafonte and Aretha Franklin and Nipsey Russell and Sidney Poitier and all of these other great and outstanding artists. Well, they're going to be here tonight at the Spectrum, and I hope that each of you will go home and tell your parents to be there tonight for this great Freedom Festival. And I hope you will also I hope you will come also, for it will be a great experience, and by coming, you will be supporting the work of the civil rights movement. Now that I've gotten the commercial out of the way, I'll move on and say some things that I want to say very briefly. And I'm being very honest. I'm going to be brief because I have other engagements. I don't have a tradition of being brief all the time. You know I am a Baptist preacher, and we can talk a long time. But today I'm going to be really brief. But I'm going to be really brief today. I want to ask you a question, and that is, what is your life's blueprint? This is the most important and crucial period of your lives. For what you do now and what you decide now at this age may well determine which way your life shall go. And whenever a building is constructed, you usually have an architect who draws a blueprint. And that blueprint serves as the pattern, as the guide, as the model for those who are to build the building. And a building is not well erected without a good, sound, and solid blueprint. And now each of you is in the process of building the structure of your lives. And the question is whether you have a proper, a solid, and a sound blueprint. And I want to suggest some of the things that should be in your life's blueprint. 1, a deep belief of dignity, worth, and somebodyness. Number 1 in your life's blueprint should be a deep belief in your own dignity, your own worth, and your own somebodies. Don't allow anybody to make you feel that you are nobody. Always feel that you count. Always feel that you have worth, and always feel that your life has ultimate significance. Now, that means you should not be ashamed of your color. You know, it's very unfortunate that in so many instances, our society has placed a stigma on the Negro's color. You know, there are some Negroes who are ashamed of themselves. Don't be ashamed of your color. Don't be ashamed of your biological features. Somehow, you must be able to say in your own lives, and really believe it, I am Black, but beautiful. and believe that in your heart. And therefore, you need not be lured into purchasing cosmetics advertised to make you lighter. Neither do you need to process your hair to make it appear straight. I have good hair, and it is as good as anybody else's in the world, and we've got to believe that. Now, in your life's blueprint, be sure that you have a principle of somebodyness. 2, the determination to achieve excellence in your various fields of endeavor. Secondly, in your life's blueprint, you must have the basic principle, the determination to achieve excellence in your various fields of endeavor. You're going to be deciding as the days and the years unfold what you will do in life, what your life's work will be. And once you discover what it will be, set out to do it and to do it well. And I say to you, my young friends, that doors are opening to each of you. Doors of opportunity are opening to each of you that were not open to your mothers and your fathers. And the great challenge facing you is to be ready to enter those doors as they open. Ralph Waldo Emerson, the great essayist, said in a lecture back in 1871 that if a man can write a better book or preach a better sermon or make a better mousetrap than his neighbor, even if he builds his house in the woods, the world will make a beaten path to his door. This hadn't always been true, but it will become increasingly true. And so I would urge you to study hard to burn the midnight oil. I would say to you, don't drop out of school. And I understand all of the sociological reasons why we often drop out of school. But I urge you, in spite of your economic plight, in spite of the situation that you are forced to live so often with intolerable conditions, stay in school. And when you discover what you're going to be in life, set out to do it as if God Almighty called you at this particular moment in history to do it. And just don't set out to do a good Negro job, but do a good job that anybody could do. Don't set out to be just a good Negro doctor, a good Negro lawyer, a good Negro school teacher, a good Negro preacher, a good Negro barber, a beautician, a good Negro skilled laborer. For if you set out to do that, you have already flunked your matriculation exam for entrance into the University of Integration. Set out to do a good job and do that job so well that the living, the dead, and the unborn couldn't do it any better. If it falls to your lot to be a street sweeper, sweep streets like Michelangelo painted pictures, sweep streets like Beethoven composed music, sweep streets like Leontine Price sings before the Metropolitan Opera, and sweep streets like Shakespeare wrote poetry. Sweep streets so when that all the hosts of heaven and earth will have to pause and say, here lived a great street sweeper who swept his job well. If it fails to your lot to be a street sweeper, if you can't be a pine on the top of the hill, be a scrub in the valley, but be the best little scrub on the side of the hill. Be a bush if you can't be a tree. If you can't be a highway, be a trail. If you can't be the sun, be a star. For it isn't by size that you win or you fail. Be the best of whatever you are. We already have some noble examples of Black men and Black women who demonstrated to us that human nature cannot be cataloged. They, in their own lives, have walked through long and desolate nights of oppression and yet they've risen up and plunged against cloud-filled nights of affliction, new and blazing stars of inspiration. And so, from an old slave cabin of Virginia's hills, Booker T. Washington rose up to be one of America's great leaders. He lit a torch in Alabama, and darkness fled in that setting. Yes, you should know this because it's in your own city. From a poverty-stricken area of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Marian Anderson rose up to be the world's greatest contralto, so that a Toscanini could say that a voice like this comes only once in a century, and Sibelius of Finland could say, "My roof is too low for such a voice." From the red hills of Gordon County, Georgia, and the arms of a mother who could neither read nor write, Roland Hayes rose up to be one of the world's great singers and carried his melodious voice into the palaces and mansions of kings and queens. From crippling circumstances, there came a George Washington Carver to carve for himself an imperishable niche in the annals of science. There was a star in the diplomatic sky, and then came Ralph Bunche, the grandson of a slave preacher, and he reached up and grabbed it and allowed it to shine in his life with all of its scintillating beauty. There was a star in the athletic sky. And then came Jackie Robinson in his day, and Willie Mays in his day, with their powerful bats and their calm spirits. Then came Jesse Owens with his fleet and dashing feet. Then came Joe Louis and Muhammad Ali with their fists. All of them came to tell us that we can be somebody and to justify the conviction of the poet. Fleecy locks and black complexion cannot forfeit nature's calm. Skin may differ, but affection dwells in black and white the same. And if I were so tall as to reach the pole and to grasp the ocean at a span, I must be measured by my soul. The mind is a standard of the man. I think those are enormously powerful words. And like I said, I hope they resonate with you no matter who you are, what your background is, what your race, your ethnic origin is. Each person in the world is entitled to be treated decently. This is the message of Dr. King. And on this Labor Day, when we honor the work that has helped build America, it behooves us to keep in mind that we are a country built from people coming from all over the world, some by choice, some not so. And each of us here has the opportunity to be free and to work and to raise our lot in society. Some of us have greater opportunity than others, but all of us are indeed entitled to an equal dignity of treatment. And so for this Labor Day, I ask you to reflect on that, and going forward, to vow to treat with decency each person you meet during your day, but most especially those who are laboring to make this country a better place. So once again, I wish you a meaningful and happy Labor Day. I thank you very much for joining me. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific time is my show, Business Lessons from the Military. And I will be talking, my guest is Kyle Packard. And Kyle will be talking about military strategies and building wealth. And I hope you will join me. Kyle is a fellow veteran and has built a very successful practice helping people build wealth. And the principles he uses all came from his military career. On Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time is my show, People Making Money. And I'm going to talk about it's what you build, not are born with, that counts. So I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite books called Talent is Overrated. And this is a lesson I think we all need to learn in our professional and business lives. So again, I invite you to join me on Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And then a week from today, on Monday, excuse me, at 10 a.m., we'll return to our regularly scheduled show, Trusts and Estates Weekly. And my guest, I believe, yes, is my very dear friend, Bill Gross. And he's one of the top probate real estate agents in the country. And Bill is going to be talking about the recent changes in the way real estate agents work as a result of the lawsuit against the National Association of Realtors. So I invite you to tune in for that. It's already been impacting the work that I do, and I'm very fortunate that I have Bill available to help me, figure out what is the proper and ethical path through this. So you won't find anybody more knowledgeable about this subject. So again, thank you so much for joining me today on this holiday, Labor Day. May it bring to you a renewed appreciation for the dignity of all people, not just here in the United States, but throughout the world. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and signing off as I always do. Marie, darling, you are my bell.